consider the millions and millions of people he has thrown under the bus, and then maybe he's not so heroic. All right, Stacey Herbert, thanks very much for being on the Keiser Report.
Don't be a Muppet.
Ooh, dangerous. All right, well, stay right there. Much more coming your way. Hi, I'm Max Keiser. Welcome back to the Keiser Report. Time now to go to Scottsdale, Arizona, and talk with former radio show host and New York Times best-selling author Charles Goyette, author of the new book, Red and Blue and Broke All Over. Charles, welcome to the Keiser Report.
Max, it's great to speak to you again. Thank you for having me on.
Charles, America is broke. Why? And does it matter if the rest of the world continues to provide it with a free lunch?
Yeah, how long is that going to go on? You know, it reminds me of Herb Stein, who said if something can't go on, it won't. You know, it's been a pretty good game while it lasted, and we've all been the beneficiaries of the dollar reserve standard. That's obviously breaking down. The dollar's breaking down on every front. The American economy is breaking down. The American people are becoming more poor. We're moving backwards. The American dream is fading. I promise, Max, that I won't use any more statistics, but I'll just say this, that the book is red and blue and broke all over. Not only is the country broke, but the red party and the blue parties are intellectually and morally bankrupt. And you know, we've had, you know, back and forth between red and blue and blue and red. And still over the course of 40 years, according to the Milken Institute study, you know, the middle class, median incomes for American men over 40 years, men with a college degree down 12%, men with a high school diploma only down 47%. There's your American dream.
All right, well, to take the counter argument here for a second, during the crisis, the Federal Reserve expanded its balance sheet by $3 trillion. During the European crisis, the European Central Bank has expanded its balance sheet by about 3 trillion euros. The Bank of England, Bank of Japan, they're all expanding their balance sheets. And in so doing, they are supporting the dollar. They are creating a market where the dollar is never allowed to find its true price, no matter how many people go to jail, no matter what the unemployment rate is, no matter how bad wages there are, no matter how disgusting the social inequality gets. The dollar is a made currency. It's protected by the central bank mafia. You can't F with the dollar, or you could be accused of some crime and end up in the prison industrial complex. Tell me why that's not true.
Well, you know, actually you're right. And the dollar is the beneficiary of the fact that everybody else is doing the same thing. But, you know, it doesn't matter to the American people, in my view, whether the dollar is up today against the euro or some other fiat foreign currency. People don't look at the exchange rate or the dollar index when they go to work in the morning, when the alarm clock goes off. People work and save for what the dollar will buy them. And you're right, you know, the monetary base has exploded. It's like a hockey stick graph, and it's been kind of wobbling on the balance sheet of the Fed, you know, a critical mass sitting there, and now the containment unit is starting to breach, and it's starting to leak out into the economy, and we're seeing it already in gas prices and grocery prices and so on. And so, you know, I mean, did they think, Max, did they think that they could create a couple of $1 trillion to bail out the banksters, create a couple of $1 trillion to buy, to buy American debt, and that there would be no consequences of this? What kind of madness is that?
Well, again, the headlines in today's papers are that Wall Street profits this year, 2012, are going to hit record highs, and the bonus pool is going to hit record bonuses. So the gas price up 20 or 30%, food up 10%. It's meaningless. It doesn't make any difference to the people who run America. And as far as the people being victimized by all of this, who cares? They're just frickin' peasants. Peasants are a dime a dozen, Charles Goyette. Why should we give a flying hoot about the peasants?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, except I'm one of them, I guess. But, I deal with this in the book, Red and Blue and Broke All Over. I talk about, you know, crony capitalism and the splicing of corporate and governmental DNA in this way, and the toxic brew that it creates. And it's true that the cronies are made better off, but the whole country is destroyed. So they're going to inherit, a mess of pottage with a broken country that has less opportunity, less prosperity among the masses. You're right, they may do very well in their insulated communities, but at some point, you know, the peasants call Ace Hardware store and ask, what's the price of a pitchfork?
Okay, so Charles Goyette, the peasants. The peasants had a bit of an uprising last year, Occupy Wall Street. Then the winter came and they had to go back to the mommy's basement and cuddle up for the winter. Now it's springtime and they're back on the streets. rabble-rousing and waving placards and having sex in tents in Zuccotti Park. What tactics can anybody use? I mean, you mentioned pitchforks metaphorically. We do on this show as well, guillotines, but there hasn't been any traction on that whatsoever. Meanwhile, on the top 1%, they finance wars, they go into foreign countries, they commit heinous acts of dismemberment and murder and mayhem, and they spend a lot of money, right? So did you see any curtailment of defense spending?
No, as a matter of fact, it goes, for example, in the Ryan plan yesterday, it goes absolutely untouched. It's true. It's bankrupting the country, and the people don't get it, and they're still partisan, and they're still loyal to either the warfare state or the welfare state, and so things will continue to deteriorate. I don't know exactly, Max, when when we reach a threshold, a critical mass in which the people just stop. But this stuff, it piles up in such a way, you think that there's going to be a collapse of some sort in the people's attitude toward this. I mean, how can anybody watch the director of the FBI in congressional testimony and they ask him, now, can the president of the United States, unilaterally order the assassination of an American citizen here on our native soil inside the country? Can he order an American to be assassinated? And the head of the FBI says, I'll have to check. He'll have to check. And then, the same week, John McCain is running around. He's never met a war that he didn't like. And he's saying, well, we invade Syria. We need to go to war in Syria. And he's haranguing the president. You're not a real man if you don't invade Syria. And I'm thinking, at some point, the American people have got to realize that the Constitution says if John McCain wants a war in Syria, he can damn well introduce a declaration of war. He's a member of the United States Senate. And then we can debate where the W&Ds are in Syria and go through that thing and how much we're going to spend and who the enemy is and what victory consists of and when we can leave. And as long as the people are willing to be flim-flammed by the John McCains and the director of the FBI's and the Red Party and the Blue Party, then their lives will continue to deteriorate. And I try to draw what should be self-evident parallel between people's appreciation for freedom from all of this state madness, freedom from the governing classes, and their prosperity. And if they get sick and tired of their waning prosperity and they want to do something about it, then they're going to have to attend to the issue of their freedom.
So these same bloodthirsty folks there, the peasants, who can't look at themselves, but they want to go kill somebody else, they also pretend that President Obama is magically making oil prices rise.
Right.
And it's not anything to do with Iran or money printing. It's all his doing through his machinations and magical incantations. Your thoughts?
This is typical. I think Pelosi said it best. She said, it's those evil speculators. And I thought, what's she going to trot out next? The gnomes of Zurich? This man, Pelosi's a great example. I mean, she's the one that told us the other day, she came out with some Keynesian nonsense about how unemployment checks, create demand in the economy and they're really good for our economy. And she's the one that said, about the healthcare bill, we have to pass this bill in order to find out what's in it. So I'm surrounded by madness. Max, you're right. You have me dead to rights. You have me pinned up against the wall. And still, I think that there's something going on in America, and it may not be, my generation, and it may not be another but clearly, look, I talked with Ron Paul back in the 80s about creating a committee to abolish the Fed. It's one small step for mankind. And, we talked about it, but it would never have gotten any traction at the time. But today, he's out there on the campaign trail, and Mitt Romney shows up in the high school gym, and he has 12 supporters there. And then later that day, Ron Paul comes to the high school gym, and they're packed to the rafters, and the kids are shouting, "In the Fed, in the Fed, in the Fed." So, I mean, there's something going on, and it may not happen. It may not transpire as quickly as I like, and we may go through this very difficult period. And as often happens, things turn out to be much worse on the other side of the reckoning. Certainly that can happen. But, I think I'm kind of enjoying the fight, to tell you the truth.
Well, yeah, sure. There's some traction for Ron Paul, but let's take a look at the last few months when Occupy Wall Street, when they found Jamie Dimon up on his Upper East Side apartment, and they surrounded his apartment, and they said, "Come out, Jamie, come out." The next couple of weeks, Jamie stole $1.2 billion from MF Global customers as a way to show that he's got the power. And if you attack me, I can reach into your account, your Chase Manhattan account, and I can steal your money with impunity. No investigation, no questions asked. So it's like, the Israel-Palestine situation, right? Every time Israel wants to show the world their strength, they just kill a few Palestinians and say that's the price tag for challenging our oligopoly here in the region. So it's the Jamie Dimon price tag. If you attack Wall Street, he'll just steal your money. So where does that get anybody? I mean, sure, there's a lot of people understanding that the Fed is now a criminal racket, but so what? I mean, they'll just steal your money. They steal your money openly, Charles Goyette. Do you keep your money in a bank in America, by the way? Do you do that?
I keep my money in a variety of different places, and I guess that's about all I have to say about that. But look, of course, you're right, and things always look very, very dark. And I've written a book that tells the American people, if you don't understand how you're being poisoned by the machinations of the state, if you don't understand that your partisanship is being used to destroy you, if you don't understand that the occupiers understand that the bailouts and the crony capitalism and the wealth transfers are wrong, and the Tea Party people have some sort of incipient understanding that that stuff is wrong too. If they can shed their partisanship and realize that they are all being equally fleeced, then there's an opportunity that, maybe they will raise their pitchforks and storm the castle gates.
Right. Well, okay, we've got about 30 seconds left. Let me ask you this. Aside from the cuts, another way to solve the debt problem is to grow. The U.S. economy, however, seems increasingly stymied by con man, fraudsters, monopolists, all operating rackets protected by the government. So is the Mubarak way the only way out? And by this I mean, what we're saying here is, does the U.S. need a regime change? And not necessarily the current occupant of the White House, but the entire crony class itself needs to be swept away.
Yeah, I mean, people need to shed the illusion that the state is the provider of all blessings, and the state is the provider of their prosperity. The illusion that the state has problem-solving capabilities. The state is. I wrote a piece today that uses that old Zen koan: if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him, in which the state is the Buddha. If you're on your road to restoring prosperity, on the road to restoring your freedom, and you meet the state with a state solution along the road, you got to kill the state. That's the only solution. You've got to shed the state. And short of that, of course, nothing's going to work.
There hasn't been a state in America since Lyndon Johnson. It's been run by a kleptocrat of banker's sense, starting with Nixon going off the gold standard, closing the gold window. There is no state in America. Let's be clear. You've got peasants and you've got banksters. The state is left the building. I'd love to see an operating, full-functioning, responsible, representational government, but it doesn't exist. And that's why the country is not worth the debts it doesn't pay. All right, well, we're out of time. Charles, go ahead. Thanks so much for being on the Keiser Report.
Hey, Max, good to speak with you. Thank you very much.
All right, and that's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacey Herbert. And I want to thank my guest, Charles Goyette. If you want to send me an email, please do so at keiserreport@rttv.ru. Until next time, Max Keiser saying bye, y'all.